Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Kaufman Corner. If you're wondering why you're hearing my voice first, my co-host Soren Petro is under the weather, so I will be co-hosting the show today with David Lesky from Inside the Crown, and we will be breaking down all your favorite Royals topics. We're going to talk about the greatness of Bobby Witt Jr. We're going to be talking about the greatness of Seth Lugo. We're going to be talking about Dairon Blanco and whether the Royals should be starting him every day in the outfield, and discussing all the other less palatable options that they have in the outfield and whether the Royals can do anything to actually improve on their offense out there. And we'll be hitting other topics as the show goes on. The Royals are 25-17. They're 8 games over 500. We've never been in this position before on this show. And David and I are going to try and figure out how that's possible. So welcome to Kaufman Corner. And I guess we're having some technical difficulty because the intro is not running, but
he is co-founder
is
of
it running now?
Baseball
That's
Prospectus,
running now.
author of Rany and the
Indeed,
Royals,
I'm
and
actually
former
here,
columnist for
just in the
Grantland, the
background.
Ringer, and the Athletic.
Now,
Soren is
we
the
hear it.
winning afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Kaufman Corner is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here's your hosts, Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro.
You know, interesting. I find out that it doesn't work unless my mic's up. So there it is. Now.
Okay. Thank you, Soren. Go back to resting your voice. So, as you can tell, this is going to be a slightly rockier than usual edition of Kaufman Corner. But you know who's not having a rocky week? It's the Kansas City Royals, David. They went 5-2 this week. They are now 25-17. And that will lead us right into our Playoff Optimism Meter, which we do on the show. We debuted a couple weeks ago and shockingly is still relevant. In fact, it may be becoming more relevant with time. So just to give you an idea of how this works, it's, on a scale of 0 to 10, how optimistic we are about the Royals' chances of making the postseason. Last week, I actually don't think we put out the exact numbers because, as usual, Soren and I got sidetracked on various topics. My score the first 2 weeks was a solid 6 out of 10. I would have given them a 5.5 out of 10 last week, partly because they were coming off a tough loss where they blew a lead against the who were they playing? The Blue Jays?
Rangers.
I think it was the Blue Jays. The Rangers. Sorry, the Rangers. Where they were up 2-0 in the 8th and blew the lead. And then partly because we were working under the assumption that the Minnesota Twins may have stumbled their way out of the race, and they had just completed a 12-game winning streak and proved that wasn't the case. So I would have given them a 5.5 last week, but I'm back to a solid 6 this week, both because of the way they played and because of the performances, which we'll get into in a little bit. But why don't you come in and introduce yourself and give us your take on your optimism for the Royals this season?
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny. It depends on the day. I mean, I read about this a lot. Sequencing, right? It's if they went 5-2, but if they had won the first 5 and lost the last 2, would you be as optimistic as you are when they won today? If Seth Lugo starts all the rest of the 120 games, I'm at a 14 out of 10. We can get to him later, obviously, but since he won't, I think I'm a little bit below you. 5 for me right now, and a lot of that is because even with how good they've been, they're still technically tied for second. But I mean, they plenty of time left, but they don't hold the tiebreaker over the Twins. The Twins have won 2 of 3. There's 10 more games between the two teams. Yeah, it's the fact that I'm at a 5 on May 12th. The fact that I'm at a 5 on Mother's Day is I can't even think about the last time that I was this excited about the Royals in May. I mean, 2021 by this point, they had started their tank job. So, it's pretty crazy. I'm excited about them. I think that they've got a legitimate shot at the postseason. if I had been on this show 2 weeks ago or whenever it was you debuted it, I probably would have been like a 3. And the deeper you go, the more likely it is.
Absolutely. It's ironic that Dayton Moore was always fond of talking about the 40 game mark as the point at which you finally you can take the results of the season seriously, because there were many years where the Royals would get off to a hot start. We weren't famously remember 18-11. But even like I said, 2021, I want to say I could look. I think they were like 16-9 at one point, but in both cases they weren't even at the 30 game mark. And by the 40 game mark, the bloom was off the rose, right? Like 40 games actually does seem to work for the Royals as an indication of whether or not you can take it seriously. And they quietly crossed the 40 game mark this week. And not only have they shown no signs of tailing off, but one of the things that's impressive as a fan more than as an analyst maybe is every time the Royals have a gut punch loss, they come back. They have not spiraled into a massive losing streak. I've written about this, pretty much every year since I really first noticed this, like in 2016 or 2017. But with the exception of 2014 and 2015, the Royals have had a 6-game losing streak, at least 6 games that started before Memorial Day, or I guess in 2020, it was like 2 weeks into the season. Within the first 60 games of the season, every single year since 2004, 20 seasons, in 18 out of 20 seasons, they had a 6-game losing streak in the first 60 games of the season. Statistically speaking, the odds of having a 6-game, if you're an F500 team, the odds of having a 6-game losing streak that early in a season is about 1 in 3. The Royals have done it every single year, but 90% of the time, and the 2 times they didn't, they went to the World Series. It's like it's something you would think would be incredibly easy to avoid, but for the Royals, it's been extremely hard. But also, if they manage to avoid it, it's an incredibly good sign. And I do want to preface this by saying it's May 12th. They still have 2 weeks to accomplish this feat. But there have been
there's a couple off days though, so
they're running out of chances. But it's just very impressive that every time you think, oh, now it's going to happen. I mean, they've lost 3 in a row. I think actually, twice, twice this season. They've yet to lose 4.
Is it twice?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
The Orioles and Blue Jays, and then they came back with a 1-run win there, and then they lost 2 to the Tigers, 1 to the Blue Jays, and then won 3 in a row. But there's been 3 games this year where they lost when they were leading going to the 9th inning. 3 games this year, which, and I should say, when we talk about the weaknesses of the team, that's one of the things I worry about. 3 9th inning losses in a season is pretty average. Like, the 2014-2015 Royals famously went a year and a half without losing a game they led after 7 innings. So, to have lost 3 already is a problem. And that the bullpen we know is a weakness. But each of those times, so the first time was against the Orioles when Will Smith lost the closer's job. Granted, they had the good fortune of playing the White Sox the next day, but they started a 7-game winning streak immediately after blowing a 9th inning lead. The next time was actually last Sunday, right before our show last week. They lost to the Rangers in extra innings. They came back the next day against the Brewers. They were losing themselves, I believe, 2-0 in 5th or 6th inning of that game. Scored 3 runs and won the game. And then the very next night, they had the excruciating loss where they were down to the final strike. The Brewers with nobody on base, MacArthur in a 2-run lead, and Adames hit a 3-run home run to win the game. That was probably the worst loss of the season. They won 3 in a row after that. So this team has shown a resilience that is impressive. Maybe it's fluky. Maybe it just they had the good fortune of running into the White Sox when they did. But they have shown a kind of fortitude to keep this going. And we're 42. We're a quarter of the way through the season, and I'm not even looking at the standings. I'm looking at just 25-17. You project that out. That's 96 wins. Like if you win 92 with the current playoff structure, you're almost a shoo-in for the playoffs. Like whether you win the division or not, yes, it would be lovely to win the division, but I think if we told me right now the Royals will get a number 6 seed and be last team in, I would take that in a heartbeat.
Yeah. And you talk about the resiliency, and yes, going from game to game. Can you think of a game, and even including the one they were down 7-0 against the Orioles? Can you think of a game where you thought, okay, this is over, they're out of it, they're done? Not a single one. And maybe that game you thought it, but then they came back and they ended up, they never quite made it all the way back in that game. So maybe it's not the best example, but that was 8-7 at one point. It's within games, it's within weeks, it's within series. All of this, they are a team that just, they don't quit, and that's a hallmark of the 2014-2015 Royals. It's a hallmark of the Chiefs too. I mean, it's like a Kansas City thing. I feel like that these teams just don't quit. But you're right, because I think back to, was it Tuesday? It was Tuesday night. It was the bad game. The number of people in my mentions that were up, season's over, it's done, absolutely toast, 3-game winning streak. Like you said, it's just, it's very encouraging the way that they are able to just brush it aside. And you wonder how many times can they brush it aside, right? Like, if they do this 3 more times in the next 6 weeks, which time is it that causes the downfall? Maybe it does, but until it does, how can we assume that it will? Because it hasn't.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, it's, I think it's a credit to the players. It does seem to be a cohesive clubhouse. I mean, after MacArthur blew that game Tuesday, Vinny Pasquantino made some great quotes after the game, of just kind of like saying, MacArthur didn't lose that game. Like, I was the Brewers MVP yesterday when I grounded it into 2 double plays and we won that game. Nobody in here has lost any faith in him. Couture sent him out, the 9th inning the very next night. Granted, he had to, because Tyler Duffy almost
didn't want to
lead in the 9th inning. But went straight back to him. So it's a reflection, I think, of the cohesiveness of the team. I think it's a positive reflection on Couture himself, just pushing all the right buttons. And one of the things, I want to talk about if we have time, and we always run out of time on this show, as you know, but that does keep me from raising my optimism level from more than a 6, is just how many dead roster spots there are on this team right now. And like, Couture is dancing through the raindrops and just getting, performances when he needs to, just enough. And then, that core of 3 or 4 guys in the lineup, and then basically the entire rotation. It's just the good roster spots are so good that they paper over the bad roster spots, which is a great thing, because it's a lot easier to upgrade a bad roster spot than to create a good roster spot. So that's actually a positive sign if they improve things. If they
I was going to say, it also helps when you have a DH like Adam Frazier. I mean, that I mean,
yes.
you said the great players, but yeah, that's a huge help.
I mean, where would the Royals be without Adam Frazier? I mean, keep in mind, game-winning home run, also I would call it a game-winning home run robbery in Detroit. So yes, I mean, we can. That's my point. Is this team, like, you look at Adam Frazier's stats and you're like, this guy's one of the worst players on the team, and you can pick out 2 games that he may have won for the Royals. Right. Sometimes you just have a season like that, and the Royals are that. One of the frustrations of being a Royals fan is we never have a season like that. Mm-hmm. Maybe this is our time. So, so I'm enjoying it. So you're saying you're a 5 on the optimism meter. I'm a 6.
Yeah, I think so.
But and again, both of those numbers vastly higher than you or I would have said on opening day. Mm-hmm. And we're just going to enjoy it as long as we can.
Yeah.
So speaking of high quality products, the Kaufman Corner podcast is brought to you by GAN Asphalt and Concrete.
Of course, we are proudly brought to you by our friends at GAN Asphalt and Concrete, serving the greater Kansas City area with free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project coming with a written warranty. GAN Asphalt and Concrete keeps your parking lot safer, helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. You can find them online at GANasphalt.com. That's GANasphalt.com, or call 816-484-3338. GAN Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot.
Thank you, Soren. So now we're going to move on to the number one reason why the Royals are where they are. We are not talking enough about Bobby Witt Jr. And we talk a lot about Bobby Witt Jr., but we're not talking enough about him. today he was 0 for 5. So, maybe the timing's not great on this, but he came in today with 3 wins above replacement in 41 games, so 42 games. Now he's basically on pace for about an 11 to 12 win season, which would be one of the, probably, I think one of the 5 best seasons by any American League player in my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
There's Cal Ripken in 1991. Barry Bonds has done it, gone over 11 wins. Dwight Gooden, if you go on the pitching side, had season for the ages in 1985. But we're talking about legendary. The Royals record.
Well, and Shohei Ohtani.
Shohei Ohtani. It's funny. He's consistently been between 9 and 10. He's like Mike Trout. He's never gone above that. But like even Trout's never hit 11. Trout's been in the 10s. Mookie Betts has been in the 10s. Mookie Betts this year might get to 11. I don't know. Mookie Betts is.
He's right there. He was a 2.9. I feel like, right?
Yeah. Mookie Betts is the new Mike Trout. That's like that. We could have, if we had a non-Royals spot, we could just discuss that for like an hour. But the point is, like, we haven't had a player like that on the Royals in a very long time. The all-time record for wins above replacement by a Royal, I believe, is 9.4 is the number on the hitting side. That's obviously George Brett in 1980, which would be even more impressive when you consider the fact he missed 44 games that year. Right. So he was on a like 13 win pace. But the actual greatest season is Zach Greinke's 2009, I believe, where he did exceed 10. So the question I want to throw out to you is, how good do you think he'll actually be at the end of the year, and where is that going to rank in Royals history?
So, the biggest thing that I keep coming back to is he is doing all of this without pulling the ball for any power. I wrote about this last week, 2 weeks ago. It was a Friday. And he, to this point, he did hit a home run on one with a Wednesday game, I believe, against the Brewers.
He won this week, right? It was his first in like a month.
To left. It was the first home run. Yeah, it's first home run.
He pulled it, which was shocking. Yep.
And he pulled it, and it was 400 to whatever, 19 feet, I think. The second farthest ball he's hit, I think, is 327 feet to left field. So he's doing all of this without accessing pull power. I looked at it. There's some mechanical stuff. It's all fixable. It's interesting because it's one of those things that you wonder a little bit. The Royals know about it. Everybody go, if you know about this, how come the Royals don't? They do. I promise they do. I'm not smarter than the Royals. I maybe 5 years ago, but not today.
I was going to say, like, the fact that you're saying that, and like you're saying it not sarcastically, and you're saying it like just like it's an that's a new phenomenon. Which credit to them. Like we're at that point now where it's like the Royals do something that's like they know what we know. I
good on them.
Couldn't have said that before. Maybe they did, and they just disagreed with us. But now I'm confident they know what we know, even if they don't agree with us.
Absolutely. But it's so funny because you look at the season he's having, and it's difficult to mess with that because if he was hitting, what is he hitting? It's 305, 372, 524. That's his line right now. If you subtract 100 from the average, 100 from the on base, and 150 from the slug, you can break down his swing and rebuild it. You can't do that right now because he's so successful even with all of that. And so it's a really interesting phenomenon that I think he'll get it right, because the thing about Bobby Witt is he is a worker, and it's what makes him likable as a player, not just because he's great, but because you know that if something is wrong, he is going to spend the time to fix it. And a lot of players are like that. I'm not saying that he's unique, but there are a lot of players who are not like that. So it's really nice to have a guy like him who is willing to make the adjustments that need to be made. So I'm convinced he will. And even if you look at like the StatCast numbers, his expected slugging percentage is coming into today was way higher than the actual slugging percentage. I think it was like 60 points higher. And then he lost it 15, 20 points today because of 0 for 5 and all that, which, by the way, he did reach twice on 2 errors that his speed caused.
And exactly, I was going to say that's actually something very underrated. That we talk about the stats don't capture X or Y. Most of the time they do, but one of the things we don't look at is reached on errors. Right-handed speedsters reach, because right-handed, you pull the ball to the left side where you have less reaction time or less chance to make up for a bobble. Absolutely, those reached on errors, that is a partial Bobby Witt stat. So we're actually underrating him with his numbers. Yep,
absolutely, and it's crazy to think that he's probably not performing as well as he should. I mean, he's got an 8.5% walk rate. He's striking out, I think it's under 17% now, which is a really good number. Even in AAA in 21, he has like a 22% strikeout rate, and he has successfully been able to cut that down. And like you said, the speed when he makes contact, there's a possibility he's going to get on. He had 2 infield hits on, was it Saturday or Friday? Whatever. I think it was one of the two. It must have been Saturday. He had 2 infield hits because he's so fast. So this is what I wrote a couple weeks ago. I don't know what the limit is for Bobby Witt Jr. because I don't think there is a limit for Bobby Witt Jr.
Like, the limit does not exist.
Yes. We can talk about this.
We're in the meme territory now. I'm quoting Lindsay Lohan. That's how crazy this season is.
We reached Lindsay Lohan quote time. I mean, could he hit it? Could he slug 650? I don't see why not. I'm not saying he will, but his expected slugging percentage coming into today was 601 without pulling the ball. And that's something he did exceptionally well last year. I mean, we think about the walk-off grand slam against the Twins. That was a pulled ball. Think about some of his biggest home runs. Those are pulled balls. Yes, he has immense power to the opposite field, just up the middle. He can hit the ball out anywhere in the park, but he's doing all of this without pulling the ball. And I also go back to, if you look at his numbers this time last year and really through May, there was talk. I mean, they sent him to the 6 or 7 spot in late May. He kind of started to turn things around. I think you might have mentioned, maybe it's not the worst idea to give him a week to reset. Or 10 days in the minors. Back last season. That's how.
And also reset his service time. That was,
Well,
there's always the diabolical.
That wouldn't have hurt either, but it doesn't matter anymore.
It doesn't matter exactly. It's all good now.
He's a slow starter, and this is his start. So and I'm not saying it'll be the exact carbon copy of June 1st on from last year, but if he turns it on from here, where does it go? I don't know. I don't know the answer because I don't think anybody knows how good he can be.
I don't think that he's going to be better. Like the fact that he has started slow in the past and improved. Like there's a limit to just how good you can be. The limit does exist, right? There is a Lindsay Lohan's not accurate in this particular scenario. But the point about like he's doing all of this, pulling it up, he's doing this while being on pace right now to hit about 19 home runs, 19 home runs. Yeah. Like, we know he's capable of more than that. He likely will. So whatever regression he has in other parts of his game, I mean, his batting average on balls in play coming into today, and this is obviously lower now, was 363, which is high. That's not unsustainably high. Mike Trout, who is a good example, right-handed, hits, extremely fast. You can have a BABIP of 360, but that's close to the limit for most players. So that may be sustainable, but each of his last 2 years, his BABIP was 295. So there's probably some regression coming there. Maybe not as much as we'd think, but even if there is, his contact rate is so much better this year that if he even hits for a little bit more power, he may end up with an OPS around where he is now, the 900 range. And again, he's on pace as is to be in the 11 win range. So if he comes anywhere close to that, this is going to be a historic season. And one of the things I want to say, he was obviously, number 2 pick in the draft. The Royals were fortunate in that it happened to be a year where there were basically 2 consensus guys who could have been number 1. Like he could have, just like Alex Gordon, when Alex Gordon was number 2 in the Royals at the 2nd pick, they were fortunate both times. Because they've had some bad fortune in the draft in terms of what pick they had. But both of those years, they were very fortunate to have 2 clear number 1 talents. And in both cases, interestingly enough, the guy that fit their organization better. In Gordon's case, maybe just because he's a local guy. In Witt's case, I think they preferred the high school toolsy shortstop over the polished college catcher. And also they had Salvador Perez. So, I think they prefer, if they had the number 1 pick, I think they would have taken Bobby Witt over Adley Rutschman, is my point.
I think so too.
But the point is, he's been a top prospect from the moment he signed his contract. But the thing you never know about top prospects, and I think even the teams don't know, is like you said, it's the work ethic. It's just, how much does this kid love the sport? Is he willing to put every ounce of effort into improving himself? Because when you look at, players who are top prospects who, and we're not talking about like pitchers who get hurt or whatever, but like especially position player prospects that just don't pan out. Sometimes it's injuries. Sometimes the talent was misjudged. Sometimes they were just tools freaks. I don't think Bubba Starling's problem was that he didn't try hard enough. I think that in fundamentally there it was just misjudging how well his athleticism would play against high velocity fastballs, etc. But a lot of times it's a guy just doesn't care enough to put in all the extra effort. I'm not going to bring up the name of a previous Royal shortstop who was extremely talented and had speed and power, but you get my point. We didn't know what to expect from Bobby Witt. You could say he comes from a great family. Obviously his dad's, yes, all the tools, all the building blocks were there for him to have an incredible work ethic, but we didn't know for sure. But everything we have seen from him, not just in the minors, but since he got to the major leagues, I mean, you talk about how he's reconfigured his swing, and his contact rate just keeps getting better and better and better. He didn't strike out on the homestand, most recent homestand.
That's true,
we
right?
haven't even talked about his defense, which is really to me the fundamental example of who he is as a player. I get some crap online sometimes from people like, oh, you didn't want him to be a shortstop anymore. Look, the numbers were the numbers. His
He was bad.
Numbers were terrible.
Yeah.
And I will say, like, if there's one thing I will, step back and say, okay, maybe we could have looked at this a little better. Defensive run, there are different defensive stats. DRS, defensive run saved, which is one of my favorites, but outs above average from StatCast, maybe a little bit better. The DRS is the one that had him as terrible. The other stats, some of them had him as below average, but maybe not quite as bad. But I mean, I heard from Jonathan Judge, who's the one of the great stat guys at Baseball Prospectus. He tweeted this. So I'm not saying anything private, but he basically said, like, last year, because his numbers were, by their standard, by the metrics that Baseball Prospectus has used, his numbers as a rookie defensively were so bad that when the numbers started coming in really good last season early on, he was worried that there was something wrong with that. Their system there was a glitch in the system, until he started looking at other stat systems all saying the same thing, that no, wait a minute, he's turned the corner here. But even last year, by defensive run saved, he was it's perpetually underrated him as a defensive player. It had him at around average, even where StatCast had him as a Gold Glove caliber. This year, defensive run saved has him as like Ozzie Smith. Like, he's +8 runs.
Is he still best in baseball?
I did not, as a couple days ago. Yes, I haven't checked that exactly today.
Yeah.
I know he's at least, there's at least one other player he's tied with. Do you want to know who also has 8 defensive runs saved? Not as a I should say. What other?
I looked at this. I'm blanking.
You're not going to guess this.
Tell me.
What
I knew
Royal?
it. I had just looked, and now I'm
okay.
blanking.
Well, I'm going to tell you, because if you saw, you would remember this. There's another Royal that has 8 defensive runs saved this year. It's Adam Frazier.
Oh, right, because it's between second and right.
He's been brilliant at second, and right he robbed a home run. This is what I'm talking about. This team, it's a combination of like superstar Bobby Witt, and over here he's hitting 180 with like no power, but it's Adam Frazier who's one home run on the season, wins the game in the 9th inning, and and we can joke about it, but of course the when you look at the Royals team statistics, the most impressive statistic at all on a team level is probably their defensive numbers, because their pitching staff, the bottom of the league in strikeouts, but they're still like a legitimate, although I don't know after today with Seth Lugo, the way he pitched, but they're
not third. No, I'm just kidding.
But their run prevention is elite, right? They were next to last in strikeouts coming to today, but 4th in the league in runs allowed. That's all defense. So, but Bobby Witt's improvement on the defensive side is a testament to how hard he's worked. It's also a testament to the Royals' unsung MVP, which is Jose Alguacil, who's helped him. I mean, Vinny Pasquantino is apparently now an Olympic gymnast over at first base, doing the splits all the time. And I mean, the defensive numbers are amazing. The infield defensive numbers, and when you got some ground ball pitchers on this team, it's made a huge difference. But Bobby Witt. So yes or no? Is he going to set the Royals record for at least position players for the best season in Royals history this year?
I would say yes.
Wow.
I think he does. He's got. I mean, WAR is both cumulative and can go backwards.
It can, but it's not like run differential where 0 is the average, right? Like it should go up over time.
Right. You will generally, for a good player, you will generally see that go up. And I mean, whether you look at Fangraphs or Baseball Reference, he's around 3 on both. I think he will. I looked this up, not WAR numbers, but 500 plus plate appearances, 300 average, 370 on base, 500 slugging percentage in Royals history, 18 times, almost half. 8 of them were George Brett. So 8 were George Brett, 4 were Mike Sweeney, and 2 were Danny Tartabull. Okay. And Tartabull was 100%. Sweeney too. There was no defense in that. There's no value on.
He was my DH on my all-time Royals roster this winter for a reason. Yeah. Yes, Danny Tartabull not playing right field for me.
Which Tartabull, my favorite Royal growing up, by the way. But the other 4, Alex Gordon. So there's value on defense, but not on base running. Well, I mean, not on stolen bases. He was a good base runner, but not on stolen bases. Jermaine Dye, who had a great season that year, all around, not stolen bases. Billy Butler, again, he's in the Tartabull and Sweeney camp, and then Carlos Beltran, the 26-41 year that he had. So that's Carlos Beltran. That's the comp this year.
Beltran's really the only comp in terms of. I mean, Amos Otis. I guess it was a different. The 70s, the power wouldn't be quite there, but relative to the era, you could put Otis up there. I think Beltran. But again, center field versus shortstop. Center field's an important defensive position. It's not shortstop. There's a
reason the shortstop is the most important and center field is the second most. It's because the shortstop's more important. So I think he does. I think he ends up there. Do you think he does?
So the one other thing, I mean, the most important thing for him to maintain, if he's going to get there, is his durability. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing we haven't talked about, which is incredibly underrated. He has never been on the injured list, right? He played, I think, 150 games as a rookie, and I mean, at least a few of the 12 games he missed might have just been to give him a break.
I remember he had a hamstring injury in New York for a week. He hurt it in New York and then out for 6 days.
Okay.
And should have gone there a little bit.
So he's actually missed games for injury, but it wasn't long enough to put him on the injured list. And then last year, 158 games. And this year, he hasn't missed a game. Like, that's going to be really interesting to see. The trend in baseball now is to not let your guys go 162 games because there is a lot of evidence that
unless you play for the Braves.
Well, I was going to say the one contra example is Brian Snitker over there. Everybody plays 162 in Atlanta. It's crazy. It's worked for them, but I mean, if you can give, I will say from the Braves' perspective, like if you guys are 10 games up in September, give your guys a break. Like what happened to them in October? You want them to be fresh. I don't think the Royals like. Let's get to September and decide if we need to rest him. But the Royals right now may need Bobby Witt out there every day. And to his credit, I think he wants to be out there every day. I mean, the Royals have a catcher who once played 161 games in a season as the team captain. So if Salvi set an example that I'm hoping Bobby will take to heart, and so far he has. So, but if Bobby stays healthy and avoids getting injured this year, he's definitely going to give it a run for its money. I mean, 9.4 is, it's a great number, but I just feel like, even if his offense falls, I'm actually more worried his defensive numbers will regress. And some of that's because it doesn't mean you'll be a worse defender. It's just that there's a lot of noise in that. Like the reason his value is where it is now is because he is grading out as like Andrelton Simmons on defense. I don't think that the pace he's going to keep up. He's not going to be a plus 30 defender at the end of the year. Right. Plus 15, maybe. You'll have to make that up somewhere else. But yeah, I think he's going to I think it's going to be very close. I think we'll be having this discussion in September. Yeah. And the one last thing I want to bring up with Bobby Witt about his defense specifically is, I think everyone listening to this is probably aware of it to some extent, but I just want to put a spotlight on the fact that, and I don't watch every single, team in baseball. I've not seen every single shortstop over the last 40 years on a consistent basis, but I've never seen a shortstop better on fly balls, going back to the outfield to catch fly balls than what Bobby Witt's doing. It actually makes me wonder if the defensive numbers, if he actually, when it comes to ground balls, when it comes to what a shortstop's job historically has been, if he's actually average wise, he's actually not super elite, but that he is providing so much value on a part of the job that people don't even put in his job description. You don't think of the bloopers and the duck snorts and those balls in no man's land. as the shortstop's responsibility, because for most of baseball history, you just assume, look, there are some balls that are just going to fall in.
Mm-hmm.
And he is so good at going back on those balls, and he has so much speed that it's almost like he's redefining the way you play the position. Now, I know J.J. Cooper, Baseball America, has pointed out Ellie De La Cruz seems to be just as good at this. I'd love to see a skills competition. I don't know if he's the absolute best, but I've never seen anybody. I mean, look, Alcides Escobar was very good at this, but he wasn't as fast. Like, with speed just adds an element. He goes farther into the outfield, and it's such a joy to watch. When there's a ball in the middle of nowhere, I have confidence Bobby Witt's going to come onto my TV screen at the last moment and catch that ball.
It surprises me when he doesn't.
Yeah,
100%. It's. I mean, Thursday night's a great example. He catches that ball, that it wasn't a bad pitch, but if he doesn't catch that ball, Waka starts his outing with a runner on second, and nobody out.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what happens? I mean, he may have gotten out of it, or maybe he gives up 4 runs, and all of a sudden a 10-4 win is a 7-2 loss, or whatever. It's those little things. It's just you're right. He's crazy on those. It's incredible to watch.
Yeah, I mean, and it's psychologically, it's always deflating when like a pitcher makes a good pitch and it's the ball's hit and you immediately think that's an out, and just bad luck, it falls in. I have to think that emotionally that can wear on a team, and it's like when you have that in your back pocket, and it doesn't matter if it's to left field or to center field, because I've seen him go. Like, the thing is, I've seen other shortstops go down towards the left field line.
Mm-hmm.
But he's really good also going towards center field.
Yeah, straight back. He's great.
Straight back, and maybe that allows Kyle Isbell to play a little bit farther back. And there's a reason. Kyle Isbell has incredible defensive stats himself. Defense is a team endeavor, and if it allows the positioning of other players to move because they know that Bobby's got that ball. It's a great asset to have. It's funny because when his defensive numbers at shortstop were so bad, and I was saying I'd love to see him in center field. Maybe he'd be a better center fielder. Bobby's basically like, why don't I do both? That's basically what he is. He's an outfielder and he's an infielder. He's doing it all. So yeah.
By the way, he'd be a great center fielder, I think.
Oh, I think his what he's doing on these fly balls, I think at least vindicates me my personal feeling like he would have made a great center fielder, because we're seeing it. Like, he's incredible on fly balls. But obviously, if you have a shortstop who's even average, you don't move that when he's got the kind of offensive value you're getting here. So Bobby Witt, is a superstar. And who else is a superstar? It's GAN Asphalt and Concrete, who are brought by. So, Soren?
Thank you, Rany. The Kaufman Corner podcast is proudly brought to you by GAN Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City metropolitan area. GAN Asphalt and Concrete is nationally recognized. They're a full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Don't risk accidents and liability in your parking lot. Get your lot restriped today. A brightly striped lot will cut down on accidents and keep your parking lot as safe as possible. GAN Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Find them online at GANasphalt.com or call 816-484-3338.
All right, David. So now let's get to the guy that you really wanted to talk about today, and very topical. One of the better starts we've seen from a Royals pitcher really in years today. And every time you think that, he can't keep it up, he just gets better. And that's Seth Lugo. So why don't you start us off? Give me your thoughts on what he's been doing this season.
I mean, today was incredible, right? 8 innings, no walks, 12 strikeouts. That's been done one time in Royals history.
Which is crazy. I mean, it was one of those stats where it's like, no, that you ran the search wrong. I'm sure of it. And then I looked it up. I'm like, Danny Duffy walked a batter at his 16th start.
Yep.
I was like, oh my God, that's actually true. It's crazy.
I looked it up like 4 different ways, and I'm going, I kept thinking I'm wrong. And looked it up. Zach Greinke, interestingly enough, in 2010, not in 2009 or 2008. 2010 was the year that he did it, but Greinke did it, and now Seth Lugo. One other thing that I noticed, and I hadn't realized this until like right before we got on here, he had 17 whiffs and 26 called strikes today. So that's 43. 43 of his 100 whatever pitches were just strikes.
CSW,
and they were
what we call CSW,
yeah,
called
CSW.
Strikes and whiffs. I mean, not foul balls.
Right. And that is the 3rd highest total in a game this season. I saw that and I'm going, I'm going to look it up. I bet it's like 20th. Nope. third highest.
I believe it's third highest in Royals history.
I think I hadn't looked
Andy
that up.
Rogers just reported. Danny Duffy, the amazing 16 strikeout start, he had, I think, 49.
Because he had 35 whiffs that game.
I mean, it was insane. There was on one other game, I can't remember who threw it, but I believe I believe it's third. It might have been the third this century or third this decade. It was third in a very, very long time for the Royals.
That's wild.
Kind of quietly. It was just like watching the start. But the strikeouts obviously are such a reassurance because for the first 5 or 6 starts of the season, you just were worried. His strikeout rate was incredibly low, especially given how dominant he was. And it's like he has regressed to the mean and then some, and made it very clear. No, this is who I am. This is not a fluke. I know what I'm doing out here. I can get the strikeout when I need it.
Well, and I tweeted this too, but he gives such Chris Young vibes to me. Like I'm surprised we haven't gotten the dad jokes about him because I mean he wears the Wranglers and then he goes out there and Chris Young's doing it with an 87 mile per hour fastball. Then he gets a swing and miss at the top of the zone on 95, and you're like, oh, I forgot he also has incredibly good stuff. It's not guile. There is guile, sure, but he can get whiffs with. He threw 8 pitches today. I think this is the second time this year he's thrown 8 in a game. He's thrown 7 most of the time, but that's crazy. And he's getting whiffs on 8 curve whiffs, yeah, and then fastball, slider. They're all getting swings and misses. This is what he's doing is not normal. I mean, it started off not normal. There are very few. It's happening more and more, but there are very few guys who go from a career reliever to not only a competent starter, but a good starter. And that's what he was last year. He was a good starter. He earned the contract he got from the Royals. We'll see how it goes. There's a full 24 more starts left to go for him, probably.
We hope, right? We hope he stays healthy. That's really
if he makes all of them, because his career high was last year at 143, I think, innings, something like that. So they might have some finagling to do with the rotation there at some point this season. But he's getting better. It feels like, and if he can, he's not going to face the Angels every day, and the Angels without Mike Trout, without whatever Anthony Rendon might be, without Brandon Drury, without Luis Renfroe, like they are tattered and bruised right now. So it's a bad offense. But if he can keep up 80% of what he did today, I mean, you're looking at, if not for Imanaga from the Cubs, you're looking at the best value free agent signing this year. And you might end up at the end looking at it that way. It's just, it's been really delightful to watch him pitch because we've seen a lot of bad pitching. We've watched a lot of really bad pitching over the last,
and we've seen a lot of bad free agent signings.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes those things are interlinked. Yeah, he's been incredible. You mentioned the Chris Young vibes. You want to know who he like, especially today, watching him, mix in whatever 8 pitches, and then he throws 92, 93, but then suddenly he dials it back, and it's like 94, 95. One of his strikeouts today, most of them were on the curve, most of them were swinging, but he had one probably in the 7th inning, later in the game. 2-strike pitch. It was a fastball, 94, basically right down the middle, and it was just taken for strike. And the batter, it was one of those things where the batter was fooled and walked away. Normally, you see a guy fooled on a curveball that drops in. And he knows he's
right.
But when a guy keeps the bat on his shoulder, it's a fastball, and he knows he struck. He knows he did not swing at a fastball in the zone. That's when you have your great stuff, because it's like he was looking for something else. He has to look for so many other pitches. So what he reminded me of? He's 34 years old, mind you, right? He reminded me of Zach Greinke.
Yeah.
But 34-year-old Zach Greinke, not the super Hall of Fame Zach Greinke we had at the in his early days, where he was throwing 96, 97 when he needed to, 98, 99 even if he really wanted to dial back, and not the 40-year-old Zach Greinke we had the last 2 years, where he was a wizard, but he's throwing 80, 89 most of the time. This is the Dodgers / even early Diamondbacks Zach Greinke, up to really the Greinke who pitched a gem in Game 7 of the World Series. He was already starting to lose a little bit of the velocity. Like, this is Zach Greinke at this age. This is about what he was. He threw half a dozen pitches. He had a really good curveball. Lugo's curveball is and we knew this going out, was his calling card, but it is extremely elite. Today, his basically the highest RPMs of any curveball any pitcher has thrown this season. He, I think it was 3,550, 3,550 RPM, and you watch those curveballs, and they're gorgeous, and it's not in the usual, like when you watch a gorgeous lollipop curveball that just has all this tumble and drop. It didn't drop that much, but it was so late. It was so tight, such a tight curveball. There was no way for a batter to really see that until the last moment, and he still gets good depth with it. Really fun to watch. And then the command, obviously, he didn't walk anybody, and his command is good. I think we're at the point. I mean, is he a Cy Young contender? Yeah, people ask me. I mean, I don't know what the next 4 months of the season is, but yes, he's a contender. Will he will he start the All-Star game? It might be a little bit, greedy, but will he make the All-Star team? Will he pitch in the All-Star game? Probably. Like at this point, I think you have to assume that Seth Lugo will be on the All-Star team.
That's a great question, though, that totally goes off every topic. How many All-Stars do the Royals have this year?
Oh, well, that'll be that'll be a good one for next week. Yeah, that's a good topic. I mean, they have more than one. This will not be a token of Royals All-Star this year. It will not be Scott Barlow or whatever reliever is having the best season. No,
not a Mike McDougal. He was there with Sweeney.
No, if you're going to go, you can't skip over Brian Anderson and Mark Redmond and go all the way to Mike McDougal. No. So Lugo All-Star, yes, maybe. Here's the question I have for you. Season's on the line. Everything's up. You win, you're in the playoffs. You lose, you're out. Do you start Seth Lugo or do you start Cole Ragans?
That's a great question.
It is great for the Royals that it's a great question because Seth Lugo's having this amazing year. I'm still not sure. I'm not sure I would call him the ace. I still think Cole Ragans, has a much better FIP. He's been hit hard in his most recent outing, although it was kind of impressive. He gave up 5 runs in the first 3 innings. Did not look good. And then came back and threw 3 scoreless, 4th, 5th, and 6th.
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised he went out for the 7th. I don't think he should have. Both runs scored after he left the game. But Cole Ragans or Seth Lugo, man,
I'm with you. I think I still say Cole Ragans just because I think some of it is they'll even out. Like you said, the expected ERA, the FIP, all that. And even in that 7th, it was weak contact. I mean, he was not hit. It was an infield single and a bloop. Like I wouldn't have put him out there either. I kind of get why he was out there.
Well, I mean, and also I'm not sure I would have sent Seth Lugo out for the 8th today. And he was totally fantastic in the 8th.
And then his best inning. But
well, I mean, and we talk about times through the order penalty, and it's true. It's a real thing, obviously. But there is evidence that one way to minimize the times through the order penalty, or the pitchers who do better the 3rd and 4th time through the lineup, are pitchers who throw more pitches. Yeah. Like Greinke also has had a lower than usual penalty. The whole point of it is familiarity breeds contempt, breeds good hitters. And if you have so many pitches, they haven't seen them all, you can stay out there and they're not going to know what to do still.
Yeah, outside of Singer, all the Royals pitchers have a bunch of pitches. Mm-hmm. So they're in a really good spot as far as getting deep into games because Ragans has 5, and then a couple of his pitches can kind of feed off each other to be 6 or 7. And in reality, the way hitters see it, Waka's got a handful added.
By the way, speaking of Waka, Waka's may have just developed and started throwing a new pitch on Friday. A slider. He's throwing a slider. Like Michael Waka, who's since the moment he was drafted was like, this guy has his changeup is so good that he's a first round pick, even though he doesn't throw a breaking ball. Like his whole claim to fame or claim to notoriety is great pitcher that is in a way is almost greater that he's who he is because he doesn't throw a break. Somehow he's really, really good with just a fastball and a changeup, which is just not normal. It's like, man, if this guy could just develop a breaking ball. So even though it's very early, I think Baseball Savant still hasn't classified it yet, but it was very clear. Ryan Lefebvre was talking about it on the broadcast. You could see it. They've written about it. It's a slider. It's like he's been throwing a cutter for a while. This is more. It was slower. It had more horizontal movement. And it's like just because he is Michael Waka and he still has that amazing changeup. And as Waka himself said, after the game, it's like, the slider moves in a different direction. Yeah, the changeup, moves. It has arm slider and moves in on right-handed batters. The slider moves away. I'm. You're talking about throwing. Look.
I'm intrigued.
Even Singer is like throwing a four-seamer,
Mhm.
and they've been toying with a sweeper. I don't know how, but like the four-seamer that's important. He's been throwing a sinker slider, having a pitch that has a different vertical motion. So it's exciting to have the Royals, all these Royals pitchers throwing so many pitches.
We haven't even mentioned Alec Marsh, who throws 6 himself.
Yeah.
I mean,
and who came back. I mean, I was going to say one of the reasons why I bumped my playoff optimism up another half point this week. I was going to say one is obviously Seth Lugo just keeps getting better, but the other was Alec Marsh came back and looked just as good, if not better.
Mm-hmm.
I was worried. I mean, maybe it was just a pumpkin to begin with, right? But then he goes on the injured list. He misses 2 starts. I mean, you don't know what you're going to get when he comes back, because he's never done this before. He came back. He looked great.
Yeah, and even 2 walks came. I think
there was the last 2 pitchers, 2 batters of the game. I think.
Yeah, he wore down a little bit. Oh. He only threw, I think, 65 pitches in his rehab start on Sunday, and they knew obviously he was capped at 80, 85, and he got to 85, and probably should have only gotten to 80. And yeah, he looked great. He's the biggest surprise to me on this.
Certainly in terms of we had hope on
sure.
Hope for him before the season, but I've made this point before. Last year, Jordan Lyles, the Royals lost either his first 15 or first 16 starts. Of the season. I guess I could look that up.
I thought it might be 17, so somewhere in there. Either way,
it was whatever it was. It was the highest, the most consecutive starts by a single pitcher that his team lost to begin the season in the history of baseball. The Royals are always good for a mind-numbing stat or two, but that one, even by their standards, is just absurd.
Pretty crazy.
It's not obviously all Jordan Lyles, but it was largely Jordan Lyles. I'm looking it up here. It was a 15. Okay, it was only 15. They were all started 0-15 in his starts. Alec Marsh replaced him in the rotation. The Royals are undefeated when Alec Marsh starts. They're 6-0. Not coincidentally, do you realize the Royals have yet to have a losing week? Like by week, I mean Monday to Sunday, right? Because we do the show on Sundays, and not counting the first 3 days of the season.
Right.
A week of more than 3 games. The Royals have yet to have a losing week this season.
Yeah, I noticed that.
At this point last year, they had yet to have a winning week.
They hadn't had they didn't get a 3-game winning streak until July.
They didn't have a winning. They didn't have a winning week until the last week of July when they had their 7-game winning streak. We never once did a show, Soren and I, where they had a winning record for a 7-day stretch. And this year they haven't had a losing record. It's an incredible turnaround. I mean, this team is on pace for historic improvement.
It's nuts. I realized that last week when I was writing something, and I'm going, wait a minute, they haven't lost. Their worst week is 3-3.
Yeah.
I mean, that if you go 3-3 or better every week, here's a hot take. I think you're going to be in it at the end. I mean, I think
you're going to the playoffs. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way you're not, and it's because of this starting pitching, because they're in every game. Obviously, there's a handful that you're not, but they're in basically every single game, which gives them a chance to come back in the 7th or have an Adam Frazier home run in the top of the 9th or whatever. That's how they're doing it, and everything I see from this rotation is legit. I'm not saying they're going to have whatever they're.
Well, wasn't it you who put out the stat that the Royals this year, I guess counting today, would be 25-9 when they score 2 runs in a game?
Yeah, it was.
Which is a better winning percentage than last year when they scored 5 runs.
Yes, it's 25-10 now because they lost Saturday because it was before. Saturday.
Okay, you're right. Okay, so 25-10.
But yeah, even so, their winning percentage last year when they scored 5+ runs was 714.
I think it was 714. And 25-10.
25-10 is I'm gonna do the math real quick.
Actually, that's also, isn't that
714?
14, yeah, I was going to say.
Now they're at the same winning percentage.
But as long as they score 2 runs.
They scored 2 runs.
0-7, I think, when they score 1 run or 0, obviously.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah,
I keep saying that because it is.
Right. It is not. I mean, this is why there's this cliche in baseball for 150 years. Starting pitching, you can't win without pitching. Trying to win with pitching is an overrated strategy because pitchers get hurt, because pitching is unreliable. But when you put together a rotation that has 5 starters that you every single day the Royals have a game. I can look at the starting pitching matchup and have confidence. Tomorrow it's Brady Singer. Yes, Brady Singer's been great this year. Like, bring it on. After that, Alec Marsh, or no, I guess it's Walker next. Okay, Walker's been up and down, but I'm excited to see. Maybe it's Marsh. I can't remember when they slotted him back.
It's Singer, Walker, Marsh.
It is Walker. Okay, so Walker, his ERA, he's had a couple, like Reagan's, a couple of outings that have knocked out his ERA, but has been solid, and I'm excited to see what this new slider does. And then it's Marsh, and it's like, yeah, Marsh might be the breakout guy on the team, if not in the division. It's a lot of fun when you can just have confidence. And I mean, we literally had 2 starts where Marsh was out, and the first Jonathan Bolin in the first one was just like, oopsie, we're out of this game in the 3rd inning, and that's not fun. I mean, to his credit, Daniel Lynch came in and was great, and so even there, we have some options, but it's. I don't even remember if the 14 and 15 Royals had 5. I mean, 2015 Royals were starting Jeremy Guthrie through one of the worst seasons in Royals history for most of that season. It was actually one of the reasons why I felt confident going into the playoffs, is that team was as good as it was, and they were going to be minus Jeremy Guthrie. Mm-hmm. But to have 5 starters every single day, if they can stay healthy, I mean, this is going to be up there with like the 85 Royals with like Saberhagen and Danny Jackson and Charlie Liebrandt and Bud Black and Mark Gubicza. Like that's the gold standard of 5-man rotation, and the Royals rode that to a World Series. So
yeah, the concern for me is these guys haven't thrown a lot of innings, and I mean Walker has, but it's been years. I mean, he's thrown 120-ish innings the last 2 years. Lugo got to 140, whatever it was last year. Singer was at 159 and 2/3, I think, last year. Reagan's has never done it, and Marsh has never done it. So they're going to need a little, probably a little support throughout the season. But even so, I mean, if you look at these 5, if they make 120 starts, 130 starts among those 5, and you got to cover 32, they've already had to cover 2, so 30 more. I think you feel pretty good about that. You're not going to get through a season with they obviously already haven't gotten through, but you probably need 11 to 13 guys to make a start throughout the year, I would guess. I think some teams are going to be like 8 or 9, but
well, again, if most of those are one or 2 starts, that's fine. Basically, aside from the top 5, if you can get through with needing only 20 to 25 starts from other pitchers, particularly with the Royals, we'll get into this later, but Chris Bubich is back on a mound, ahead of what at least my mental schedule would have had. I don't think it's too aggressive. I think it's actually a really good sign. He's made 2 rehab starts already. I think he gave up the run in the last one, but he also struck out the side. I see no reason to be concerned. So if these guys can just stay healthy for the next 8 weeks, I think the Royals will have a very palatable, exciting, unpredictable, because Bubich was like a star for about 6 minutes before he blew out his elbow. But I'll be excited. I won't be terrified of having him in the rotation if it comes to that. So yes, I think the rotation's health is really the number one concern we should have between now and the end of the season. So,
but there's some trade options too. So if they need to, there's some pretty solid arms out there.
I will say that. Well, my concern though is whatever trade capital they have, they're going to need that probably for a bullpen arm and probably for a bat, and those are cheaper. Like a rotation starter, they're available, but understandably, the cost of a starter is probably higher than almost any, than either a reliever or even a position player. So if they can use their trade chips in other directions, not needing a starter is a really nice asset for a contender.
They need this. Ideally the starter, when they need it, if they would need it, comes from within.
Right. So we've not surprisingly, we've blown through an hour here. We're almost done. We got a lot of topics we didn't get to, but I do want to very quickly just get your take. Dairon Blanco, should he be starting every day, most of the time in the outfield? Like, what do we do about the corner outfield spots? Drew Waters had a kind of a down week, a little bit in Omaha this week, but Dairon Blanco has been, they've given him. I think he started 3 in a row now, and obviously had a huge game in the first one. But what do you think of him? Do you think he is a potential solution?
Long term, probably not. I don't think so. I think that you look at the batted ball metrics; they're not. They don't speak to the numbers. But also at some point, the numbers are what they are. And he's produced, and he's not Bobby Witt Jr., but he puts the same pressure on a defense the way that Bobby Witt does. And so that's a nice extra to have an elite tool and have that to be able to go into your lineup. I think is useful. I wish that the answer was, well, of course not. They have better corner outfield options, because I don't think the Royals trust Blanco in center every day. I think they've shown that. But when you're starting Hunter Renfroe and he's got 121 plate appearances this year, I don't know what you lose from giving Dairon Blanco some time in the outfield, because he does things Renfroe can't. Renfroe can hit a ball farther than Dairon Blanco. I don't think anybody will argue that. Renfroe can probably hit a ball harder than Dairon Blanco. But also, he's hitting, 153, 223, 261. He is a little bit faster than I am, and he has a great arm. That's what you get from Hunter Renfroe. They're not going to cut him because he's got the option, and I mean, they may eventually, but right now he's on the roster. But what do you lose from that? I'm okay with playing Melendez, this is the craziest thing that I've ever said, but his defense keeps him in the lineup. How did that happen? I don't. Maybe David Holland deserves the same credit that Jose Alguacil deserves, but Melendez has had a good stretch this year already, so that's something to land back on. B, he's been a pretty good defender out there, at least average. So I don't have a problem with Dairon Blanco being out there if you're not going to call up Drew Waters, who strikes out too much in AAA. And was it JD Martinez the other day or last week who was talking about the gap between AAA and the majors being bigger than ever before? I think it was him, because he was down there.
There was an article in The Athletic, I want to say,
that
we're just talking about how the velocity difference between AAA and the majors.
That's what it was.
Or even using stuff scores. Like we can actually. This is a nice thing. We can quantify. It's not simply looking at a AAA pitcher and a major league pitcher. We can actually say, look at his velocity, look at his movement, et cetera. The gap between AAA and the majors is as high as it's been in a while. And I'm not surprised in the sense that the if you believe that the quality of play in baseball in the major leagues is improving over time, and I do think it is. We know the velocity in the major leagues has gone up 3 or 4 miles an hour in the last 15 years. Then the gap, this is. I don't want to get into advanced mathematics here, but if you know the Gaussian curve, the bell curve, everyone knows the bell curve, right? The farther you move towards the right end of the bell curve, which is where all the very best players are, the bigger the gap in talent is going to be between the 800 best players or whatever, 780 best players in the world who are on a major league roster, and then the next 780 who are playing in AAA. So yes, I thought it was interesting reading that, and in light of the fact that some Royals hitters and frankly pitchers have really struggled to make the adjustment to the major leagues, and some have not. And sometimes it's hard to tell who's who.
Yeah, and so I mean, I think maybe you eventually turn to Waters, or maybe Tyler Gentry gets hot. Right now he's scuffling.
Tyler Gentry, I'm sorry. I mean, he even if he gets hot, like I need to see it for so long. I don't think you're going to be relying on him this year.
I'm fine. I'm looking at like August, September. If you get to that point, if he turns it around, he's been better the last week or so. But I'm fine with giving Dairon Blanco that opportunity first, because he's shown he can do it in the majors, and I think we'll see. They saw 3 lefty starters this weekend, this series, so that kind of skewed the playing time a little bit. But I'll be curious to see how they handle Blanco moving forward, because let's see, Mariners is 3 righties, then A's. I think they're scheduled maybe to face 1 lefty in that series. I can't remember now. I looked earlier and now I'm blanking. But I mean, they're not going to see as many lefties over the next week to 10 days. I'll be very curious to see if Blanco gets 3 or 4 starts over this next week. And I think he deserves it. I don't know if I believe that he'll do well enough to hold it down, but I think he deserves the shot.
So I'm going to sound like a woman in a rom-com from the 90s now and say that I'm not sure Dairon Blanco is Mr. Right, but he's Mr. Right now. Because look, I mean, he's 31 years old. Like Dairon Blanco, it's fascinating because the way the sport has changed now is the aging curve is just completely broken. You have guys who come up and they're 21, 22, and they're stars, and you think they're going to be superstars, and they never get better, which is, again, speaks to the whole Bobby Witt, the relentless drive to improve. That's so important, and even an incredibly talented young player. But you also see guys make it to the majors much later than they used to and still have productive careers. I mean, to get to the major leagues, he played in, what was it, 5 games. This was, I want to see. He came up with. Did he come up with everyone else in Toronto? Was he part of the Toronto?
He was there. Well, maybe
I think actually he debuted. He came up for like 2 games in May, and then I think he was up for that. But the point is, he played like 7. He had 7 plate appearances as an age 29 player, and then he was 30 last year as a rookie. He's 31 now. Like, this is, a guy on the downslope of his career, and yet his career line in 183 plate appearances, not a huge amount, but more than just this season. Not counting today, he went 2 for 4 today, but coming in today, 261 batting, 326 on base, 442 slugging, 110 OPS plus.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he's a 110 OPS plus guy, but the other thing we know is, look, is he going to give you speed? Absolutely. He's got 35 stolen bases in his career. And again, he's a tons of pinch running, et cetera, but still 35 stolen bases in 100 games. And a lot of those where he was only a pinch runner, 183 plate appearances. Is he going to give you defense? If used in left field or corner outfield, I mean, maybe he can't play center, but that kind of speed, his arm is maybe not great, but he's not going to be a liability as opposed to someone like maybe Hunter Renfroe. So you're getting speed and defense as a floor, as a baseline. There may be some offense there. And there's a guy who in the minor leagues, was never great, but wasn't bad in AAA. And in his last run in AAA last year, he had 347 with a 444 on base, 451 slug, and his strikeout rate was only about 17-18%. So much of we talk about on the show with prospects is strikeout, because that's the one thing that'll really get you at the major league level. And you said Drew Waters, for all of his, performance this year, and I still think he'd be another Hunter Renfroe, but he's at 30% or so. So Blanco was never, was always a much better contact guy in the minor leagues. Didn't hit for much power, but didn't hit for no power. That's the other thing. It's like there's a certain level of pop you've got to have, or you're Terrence Gore, and he's not that. He had a home run this year. He's got
14 homers in 2022 at Omaha.
Yeah, he's got 4 in his limited play time in the major leagues. Twice in his career, he's come within. Like last year, he came closer to the hitting for the cycle than any Royal since George Brett.
Was that the game he doubled off the wall when he did the home run?
Or was he the one who hit his home run when he, instead of a triple, barely cleared the wall?
Yeah,
I remember it was a wild game where Dairon Blanco came within inches of being the first Royal in 30 years. Here we are. 2 doubles and a triple. So I think maybe you're right. It was the second double, almost cleared the wall, and would have given him the cycle in Detroit in a wild 11-10 game. So there's some ability here. And when you factor in the speed, the defense, I don't think he should be playing every day, right? Starting every day, but 3 to 4 days a week, like you said. And then this gets back to Matt Couture making decisions to not just to maximize the chance of winning today, but also keeping these guys healthy and sharp all season long. Blanco may be one of those guys. Yeah, he might be exposed playing 162 games, but if he's a 70 or 80 game starter, or even 100 game starter, right now, he's Mr. Right Now. He might be the best option in some corner spot. Look, Adam Frazier was DHing and winning the Royals game. So I have some trust in Couture to make some right moves here. So anyway, this is 70 minutes of almost unfettered optimism here. This is a feeling I'm not used to on Kaufman Corner. Whether that's because
these Royals
or it's because you're my co-host today instead of Soren. I don't know. I'll leave that to the listeners to decide. But it was great having you on. And everyone go check out David's great work at insidethecrown.substack.com.
Yep.
Is that right?
Okay. Not full, but I get you there.
Okay. Well, close enough. Just Google Inside the Crown. You'll find his great work online. So for David, for Soren, I am the good doctor, Rany Jazayerli, saying thank you for tuning into Kaufman Corner, and we'll be back here next week.